Greetings and salutations, travelers of the internet. Welcome to the Lit Roundtable. I'm Anna.
And I'm Joseph. We'll be your wise or not-so-wise mentors for today's audio adventure into all things storytelling and all things Viking-related. Today, we're going to talk about Vikings. And it may or may not be because of the new God of War game that just came out. That's God of War Ragnarok.
Okay.
May have inspired this episode theme.
I'm excited. I have not played that game. I don't know anything about it, but I am excited about this topic. So,
it's fair. Cool. So first, we'll get the normal things out of the way with first, a shameless plug for our read-along that just started for Red Seas Under Red Skies, the second book of the Gentleman Bastard series, and we're only one part deep, so it's not too late.
no.
You can pick it up and read along. It's been super entertaining so far. What are your thoughts?
Oh, so good. Glad to be back in the world. I am paying more attention to setting this time around, so I'm upping my game.
Aw, yeah. We're professionals.
Yeah. Despite my setting blindness.
You have a writing degree.
I know. What a deal.
No, it's been great. It's been awesome. Super happy to be reading that book. So go check that out. And first, before we dive into the Viking topic, let's go over the usual stuff. So what you been watching? What you reading? Playing?
Not playing anything.
Writing?
Ooh. How many words?
It's November.
It's November. How many words do you think I've written now?
At least one.
More than that.
Okay, hey, I was right.
2,000. Oh, I have an exclamation mark, and I thought I had a decimal point that didn't exist. I was like, that's not right. I have not written 20,000 words. 2,024 words.
Nice.
Do you know how many words I should have written by now?
Like 10.
26,667, if I'm going to be on
This
track.
Is usually the way your Novembers go, though.
It's true. It's true. Very behind and then crunch to the end. Pound out.
You'll crank out 15,000 words in a weekend.
Absolutely, I will. Should have done it last weekend, but I was tired.
You gotta get that shirt.
Gotta get that shirt. I don't even know what the design is for this year. I should look at that. Because that'll either motivate me or disincentivize.
Or just keep it a surprise. Mystery shirt.
Sure. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's where I'm at with NaNoWriMo. Not very far, but right on track according to my usual track record.
Should we tell the people what NaNoWriMo is if they don't know?
Oh, it's National Novel Writing Month. And the goal is to write 50,000 words in a month. If you're interested in this topic, we did a whole podcast on it last year where we talked about what it is. And you don't remember that?
Yeah, I do. What are you? Yeah.
We talked about the
It was last year.
Yeah, we talked about the organization and like what NaNoWriMo does for supporting creativity and writing programs in schools. It's really cool. You should check it out.
Yes. See, sometimes I can't remember what was an actual episode or if we were just talking.
Okay, you're off the hook.
Because the things that we talk about on the podcast are things we would just talk about normally anyway.
This is true.
It's hard sometimes.
This is fair. I agree. Okay, so that's my writing. For what I've been reading, I'm reading Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. I thought I got this as a recommendation as a cozy fantasy. I don't think it's a cozy fantasy anymore. It's really good. But
did it get dark?
Yeah.
Oh.
It really did. But I like it.
Like The Blade itself dark or like Hall of Smoke dark?
Oh no. Just
standard fantasy like Lord of the Rings?
No.
Like
you know in The Light of the Midnight Stars when it started to get like
when just tragedy after tragedy.
No, it's just
befell.
like yeah. But also it's just spooky. Like the whole first chapter she's in a pit of bones. Okay, look, I think that this might be a zombie flick, which I'm trying to not be biased about.
I'm proud of you.
because there's for sure cannibals.
Ugh.
And the cannibals have been cursed by the gods, and so they're kind of zombie-like now. They're not zombies, but they're zombie adjacent, and I wouldn't be surprised if a zombie popped up, is what I'm saying. Because she builds a dog out of bones, and it animates. So it's a skeleton dog. Which sounds...
It's turned into a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, I told you. I don't feel like it's a cozy fantasy.
No.
But I kind of like it. And by kind of, I mean I like it. But
good Halloween book, you know?
I know, I didn't even know that when I checked it out. So I'm working on that. And then, of course, Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch. These Happy Golden Years by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Laura and Almanzo are finally engaged, and it's so stinking cute.
Spoilers. Wow.
Her name is Laura Ingalls Wilder, and in the book, she's Laura Ingalls, and he's Almanzo Wilder. Like, it's...
I know, I'm just making a joke like spoilers as if I was going to actually read those on my own.
I'm just saying, if you're a listener and you're annoyed about being spoiled about Little House on the Prairie, I'm sorry, you're about 100 years late to being upset.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Fair.
And that's really all that I'm actively reading at the moment. I know.
Cool.
I'm shocked. For what I'm watching, my list is very short this week because I've only been watching Sister Wives. But I'm almost all caught up. And then I can return to my usual, like, pleasure.
Judgment.
That's
shame.
fair. I deserve it. But I just needed to get caught up. And it was a lot of content.
Yeah.
So.
Just answer me this one question, and then we can move on. Are all of the wives that were there in the beginning still married to him?
This is the drama I've been catching up to.
Was there a divorce?
Yes.
Did someone get out of the...
Yes.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. Anyway, that's why I need to get caught up, because I needed to know what led up to this moment. Anyway, I also said last week that I didn't think it was scripted. I do think that parts of it are scripted. Or at least they're put in scenarios that like they go on some trips that I'm like, there's no way this huge family could afford to go on that trip without it being like a production. Literally.
TV show money.
Literally.
Yeah.
So, anyway, some of it is scripted. I think the emotions are real most of the time. Or at least real adjacent. But to make up for my not having a long watch list, I have two little word things I want to share with you, if that's okay.
Okay.
I learned about the word eggcorn today. Have you heard the word eggcorn?
Eggcorn, like E-G...
G.
E-G-G?
Mm-hmm.
C-O-R-N. Mm-hmm. Eggcorn.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the word that explains like idioms that get mispronounced. So the official definition is a word or phrase that results from a mishearing or misinterpretation of another with an element of the original being substituted. So like all intensive purposes versus all intents and purposes. Like the original.
So eggcorn is like acorn.
I guess. I don't know how the word came to be, but I didn't know there was a word for that. And so I was just like excited to learn that there was a word for that.
That is interesting.
So, eggcorn.
Eggcorn.
Yes.
Eggcorn.
And the other thing, I want to ask you, what do you think a big box store is? Give me a definition of a big box store.
Well, retail being... Well, me having worked retail enough, a big box store is basically like your Walmarts, those are like big box stores because it's like big shelves full of crap that you go in and buy stuff from.
Yeah. So you're right. Here's what I thought a big box store was.
Okay.
I thought that it was a store with big boxes, like a store that sells bulk items. So Sam's Club, Costco. Yes.
Okay.
I thought that
That's valid.
was a big box store. And it occurred to me this week, as I was leaving Walmart, that big box could just mean that the store itself is a big old box. Which I was also thinking about how architecture has changed recently. These are the things I think about when I'm driving. And how all of the like fast food joints are getting away from their like signature looks and they're all just becoming boxes dropped on the planet, which I think is annoying. Because like Pizza Hut, you used to know what a Pizza Hut looked like because of the dumb roof. But now they're just boxes. Yeah. Which is funny because our hometown still has like the original Pizza Hut building, but it's like a noodle house now. So it's a noodle house in a Pizza Hut.
You guys have a noodle house?
Not Noodle and Company. It's a locally owned noodle
via. Oh, you're right. Noodle and Company is a different thing.
Yes, this is like
is it
you
good?
Can get pho. Yes, it is good.
Oh, nice. Oh, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah. Okay, never mind. I know exactly what we're talking about.
Anyway, so I'm just like kind of lamenting that like stores have gotten away from their unique looks, and then I was thinking about how they're boxes now, and then I had an epiphany like, oh my gosh, I think it just means big retailers is what a big box store is.
Yeah.
It is.
Pretty much.
It's not the things inside the store, it's the building itself. It's a big old box.
Yeah.
And part of a chain normally. Anyway, those are my 2 word epiphanies for this week. I thought I would share those with you.
I like the eggcorn one. That's fun.
You didn't think the big box store was funny?
Well, I already do the big box store thing.
But isn't it funny that I didn't know?
Until you were 30.
This week. This actually relates to our last podcast. So the reason I was thinking about this was because when I was listening to our last episode and you were talking about your D&D campaign, it sent me on this rabbit trail. Because we were talking about the dragon eggs. And I made the comment about, wouldn't it be better if it just didn't hatch? And then I thought, well, maybe it's not even a fertilized dragon egg. And then I was like, wait a minute, when do dragon eggs get fertilized? Do they get fertilized before they're laying or after they're laying? And then I was like, wait a minute, chicken eggs. Do chicken eggs get fertilized before or after they're laying? So I had to look up, when does a chicken egg get fertilized? And I just...
Before?
Yeah, if you didn't know, chickens have sex. I just wanted to know at what point is the egg fertilized. Because I think as a little kid, I thought that like the eggs were laid and you just had to collect the eggs before the roosters came and sat on them. I didn't know like what the roosters would do to them when they sat on them. It was just a matter of like, you have to get there before the rooster does. But in fact, you have to get there way
You have to keep the hens away from the roosters.
Yes. Anyway, dragon eggs. Probably fertilized before they're laid. Anyway, they're not real. Joseph, tell me what you've been reading, watching, and playing.
Anyway, they're not real. All I could think about that whole time was that weird Barney movie where there's that rainbow-colored egg that they're like chasing around. Yeah.
What was in that egg?
I have no idea what it was called.
What was in that egg?
I don't know.
Was it a baby dinosaur?
Must have been fertilized.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, for playing, I've been playing D&D, and that's been fun.
How's that dragon egg?
It's survived.
Oh.
It has survived, miraculously. And, unfortunately for Sarah, we have been treating this like a big open world sandbox experience.
Poor Sarah.
But so like basically in the module that we're playing through, there's a we could have just said, and then like fast forward 13 days later to when this happens, and then we could have just kind of fast traveled or like done whatever to progress the story.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that was an option. I thought we were going to have to go through like every single day. So that's how I've been treating it, and clearly everyone else has too, because we've got like 2 weeks to kill in Baldur's Gate, and we're going to go try to investigate a haunted hospital.
Oh.
So we're like knee deep in side quest right now, and it's not even, we're just waiting for people to show up to continue the main quest. But in my defense, it's not my fault that the module wrote in a 13-day gap
Yeah.
into the story.
That's really funny.
And it's just more opportunities to level grind. We just got to level up. You just got to keep killing those monsters.
There you go.
But no, it's been really fun. I haven't been playing many other games because tragically, my PS5 has been sent to Sony to try to get repaired because I think it took a power surge, even though it was hooked up to a surge protector battery backup thing, but it was old. The surge protector was, so maybe it just conked out. So, yeah, that's off to get fixed. Hopefully,
Sorry, bud.
hopefully they can fix it with a warranty, and if they can't, it'll have to be a paid repair. But we'll see what happens.
I didn't realize you had warranty on that. That's actually good news.
Well, it's just within Sony's, like, it's like within a year. I haven't had it a year, so.
Yeah, you barely had it at all.
But I'm not sure if they'll cover it because it was like a power surge thing and not a manufacturing error. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
They'll probably be able to tell when they get it.
Oh, you didn't tell them?
No, I just sent it in as a warranty repair. So we'll see if... And I just said that it won't turn on.
Sneaky.
Well, I mean...
Hopefully they don't listen
whatever,
to this podcast.
Man. Whatever, man. Sony's not going to go bankrupt.
Absolutely
if they fix my PS5 for free. So I haven't been doing many video games, which it's also heartbreaking because I had mentioned the God of War Ragnarok game, which just came out, and now I can't play it because my PS5 isn't here, and I'm not going to buy it on PS4. That's dumb. So, yeah, now I get to catch up on some Switch games because I still have the Switch. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Everything that was damaged is replaceable. It's just sad.
Yeah.
So, for watching Andor, which is awesome, I did practically finish Dahmer.
Oh.
Which I only have like one episode left, and I might not even watch it because he's in prison now. Whatever. I know he gets killed in prison. And people like sending him fan mail, and it's just gross. That whole show is just gross.
It's so gross. I told you.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's gross. But it's like a car crash where like you just like the morbid curiosity just keeps you coming back. And also Evan Peters is a really good actor. So even when he's playing super messed up people.
Yeah.
But anyway, also watching My Hero Academia, and that's been a trip. That show has changed. This is not the show that I knew. Oh, man. Also watching Spy Family, which is just an injection of dopamine into my skull every Saturday, and I love it so much. It's amazing. How are you caught up on that one?
No, because I've been stuck in Sister Wife land. I'm almost out. I'm in the last season, and it's short. I'm almost out.
You'll have so much more fun with Spy Family.
I know. I'm so excited to binge all the shows that I've been paused.
Neglecting. Also, we're watching Fate Zero now for anime night. That's been fun.
It has. And we're watching it in English. So Matt Mercer and Liam O'Brien are in it.
Yep.
Makes me happy.
Yep. Vinland Saga, I've watched a little bit more of, which is fitting for this episode because that is a Viking-themed anime. Also, of course, Critical Role, Campaign 3, watching that. And Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which is on Netflix. I forgot to mention this last time because this is more of like a Halloween-y type show. It's spooky. It's an anthology thing. It's like a bunch of short, like each episode is self-contained.
So kind of like a Black Mirror kind of.
Yeah, only less. It's like Black Mirror, but different. It's a little cheesier than Black Mirror, let's be
Okay.
honest.
Okay.
Like Black Mirror takes itself a little more seriously than this one does.
Okay.
But it's still great. It's really fun. And I hope they make a second season. It's been really good so far. I think we only have one left. The actor that plays Rodney McKay in Stargate is in one of the episodes. And that was just a joy to see him
I
do
love
something
him.
other than Stargate.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if he's really done much besides that ever since. I don't know. I have to look up his IMDb. And for reading, Red Seas Under Red Skies, for the read along, and also Rhythm of War, the last Stormlight Archive book that's been released. And then I get to wait, along with everyone else, for the 5th book to come out. Yay.
Do we know the title of the 5th book?
No, but the prologue has been released.
Oh. Okay. I was going to say, I saw some Brando Sando news, but I didn't.
That's the
read it too
Lost Metal.
closely.
That's one that just... I think that's actually a Mistborn book, I think, that came out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, that is all of my stuff,
Nice.
I believe. So, yeah. You ready to talk about Vikings?
Yes.
And not the football team. They're not even going to come up after this.
You know what's
So-
funny? I was trying to make... So I knew that we were making this episode, and I was trying to like get our art put together. And in Canva, I looked for Vikings, and it was all blue and or purple and gold. And I was like, no,
Ooh.
no. I mean, actual Vikings,
Yeah.
not Minnesotans.
Not Minnesotans. It's also just a really odd place for the Vikings to be their theme. I don't know. Maybe there's a history behind it that makes sense. Like, was it settled by people from Norway or Sweden?
I think
Like,
possibly.
immigrant-wise? I don't know.
It's possible.
Anyway, I said it wasn't going to come up.
Okay.
And here we are talking about a football team. So no, we're talking about historical Vikings, historical Vikings versus their pop culture depictions and the romanticization, if that's even a word, the romanticizing of Vikings in the modern era, similar to our pirate episode that we did that you can check out. I think, was that last season too? I think so. That one was super fun, so check that episode out if you want to hear about pirates. Admittedly, the pirates were easier to research because everyone can agree that those pirates that I talked about were real people that existed.
Right.
There's a little more mystery and mythology surrounding Vikings, where a lot of the famous figures, it's debatable whether they were real. And they may be kind of a mishmash of a bunch of different people and their legends just kind of mixed together into one epic person. So that person being Ragnar Lodbrok, who was also the main characters on the Vikings TV show from History Channel. So he may not actually be real, but there's a lot of like legend and lore surrounding him. He's like the most famous Viking. So I'm going to start by, I just want to ask you, what do you know about Vikings historically? Like if you had to, and I mean it can be based off pop culture too, if that's most of just what you've been exposed to as far as Vikings go. What do you know about historical Vikings?
I believe that Vikings historically were better at maintaining like proper hygiene than like some of the Norman and other influences from the South were.
Is that something that you just remember from like a class, or where are you getting that from? It's random.
Yeah, I know it's random.
Like I never came across that, so I'm just curious where you got that from.
I don't even know. It could have been from a class. It could have been from a video somewhere. I don't know. It's just that's like oh gosh, sorry. I don't know exactly. I don't have any sources. I
That's
didn't. I
fair.
didn't do a lot of
That's fair.
research. That's something that I've heard. It's probably worth doing some research. But I think that they were like very like inclined to be clean, even though sometimes in modern depictions of them they look kind of grimy and gross.
Now that you mention it, I feel like I've heard that somewhere too.
Yeah.
I feel like I've also heard that. How about like what is a Viking?
A Viking is someone from the northern Europe area around like Norway and Sweden, and where you have those like inlets of water because they were predominantly not scavengers. What is the word I'm looking for? Raiders. Like their whole livelihood was going off on a boat and coming back with other people's goods.
Mm.
And I know that Beowulf is like one of the oldest written stories from that area. Kind of a mythology for Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest and say that I get Vikings and Saxons a little befuddled in my brain. I know they're not the same, but they're related somehow. I'm hoping you can enlighten me.
They fought each other.
Yes. That's true because
So
in the Last Kingdom there's a lot of discussions about the Saxons versus the Vikings. Right?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway.
So what if I told you that Viking was actually more of a verb?
That would make sense because it's an ing word.
Yeah. So people from the Scandinavian countries like
Norway and Sweden.
Norway, Sweden, and Denmark.
In Finland?
Sure. Yeah. I believe so.
Okay.
Would go a Viking, and those were the people that would go on the longboats and do the pillaging. Not everyone that I feel like people lump the entire people group as quote Vikings, but that was a specific occupation for a specific group of people, and not everyone did that. So I feel like that is a misconception.
Okay, well, thank you for correcting me.
And also, they were really good farmers. They they had agriculture that they did, but the north, like, it's a pretty cold cold place. Like, they still did their own agriculture and stuff, but they did pillage and raid and stuff because they saw other people had stuff that they wanted, so they're like, I'm gonna take that. So then the Vikings, the people that did the pillaging, would go off and do that. That was like their job. So also, I'm not a historian. I may mess things up. Forgive me.
Everything I said earlier was just me recalling bits of information that I vaguely remembered because I didn't do any research for this episode because it wasn't my episode. So also forgive me, please.
So in a way, they were kind of like proto pirates because they would sail around in their long ships and pillage places, and it's kind of what pirates did, only just hundreds and hundreds of years in the past, before pirates were a thing. So the Vikings were the warrior people. So the people that the Vikings were a part of were really good. Like I said, they were good farmers, but Vikings themselves were also good explorers and really, really good at naval, like navigating and all that good stuff, to the point where actually Christopher Columbus was not the first European to find the Americas. That credit goes to one Leif Erikson, who was a Viking explorer, and he landed up north in Canada, somewhere. I forget. Yeah, and
I believe
that was the first. That is actually the first recorded time when a European interacted with Native Americans, was Vikings and Native Americans up there. So, sorry.
Why are you saying sorry?
I was just going to say sorry, Christopher Columbus.
But not really.
Sorry, not sorry. Weren't that great. Leif Erikson's cooler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hot take.
Well,
Not that hot of a take.
Not that hot of a take. Yeah, it's interesting because, the Vikings don't really exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I don't want to say that the indigenous people of North America don't exist anymore because they do, but they were significantly impacted by other European explorers, much like the Vikings were.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very similar history. So.
Yeah. So Leif Erikson is one of the more famous Vikings.
Yeah.
For discovering America and Native Americans and all that good stuff. So that's super cool. And that's kind of what actually the Vinland Saga anime is kind of about. Like one of the characters in that anime claims to have been to America and like met with Native Americans, and it's cool. So I feel like that actually might be Leif Erikson in the show. I just can't remember his character's name. But yeah, so that's kind of what I mean. There's more information that we know about Vikings than can be communicated in one podcast episode. There are other famous Vikings too, like Ivar the Boneless, who was supposed to be the son of Ragnar Lodbrok. Who, it's also, I mean, it's more likely that he existed, but a lot of the records on these historical Vikings there's definitely some exaggeration and inflating of events that happened to kind of make them seem like these larger than life epic like warrior king people, when they may have been a little less so in real life, because of like the oral tradition that they had of passing these stories down. And of course there were definitely embellishments that happened with some of these people, but yeah, some of the most famous ones are like Ragnar Lodbrok, Ivar the Boneless. Leif Erikson is confirmed real because of like the documents of America and stuff. Sure. But
I don't want to say that. Like, I understand what you're saying about oral tradition having a certain reputation for inflating things.
Well, I mean, in this situation, not all oral traditions, but
but I also want to maybe I mean, you can't say that the Vikings didn't put up a fight when they were being conquested.
Yeah.
Like, they certainly gave Rome and the Saxons a run for their money when they came up against one another, right?
That's not, well, Rome wasn't like exactly this. The people that Rome fought were like proto-Vikings.
Okay.
They were barbarians, but in the north, that's kind of, they're many years apart.
Right.
But I know what you mean in spirit.
Like they're related.
Relatives.
So I just don't want to like say that they weren't like an impressive people that was organized and like knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because I think they did. I just think that they were outnumbered ultimately.
And there are just there isn't as much verifiable records as much as like with the pirates, because the pirates,
sure, there's
so many written records of like, man, I could look up exactly when Captain Kidd was born, who his mom was, right, and like all this stuff, just because there's like records. Not so with the good old Vikings, right. But
I want to go back to when we were talking about them being in North America for just a moment, because I want to explain my comment earlier a little bit, because there's a current fad in the U.S. right now where like neo-Nazis and white supremacists will like assume like Viking garb. That's really annoying.
It's super cringe.
It's super cringe, but also cringe because Vikings were not that way necessarily. Like they had a better relationship with the Native Americans than people that came later. So like there are Native American TikTok creators that I follow that get really frustrated when Vikings are being portrayed as these neo-Nazis, and they're like, this is not cool because like we had a good thing with the Vikings, and then we all just got destroyed.
Yeah.
So.
And I think there's probably studies and research that could be done about why exactly there's this weird phenomenon with the Viking stuff being attributed to like far right like movements and groups. They're trying to like adopt that appearance. I mean, yeah, Scandinavian people were white. That's about the only similarity
Right.
That I can think of. I mean, even if you have Viking ancestry, the ideology that you hold to now is not going to be the same as what they had then.
No.
But
anyway, I just hope that I was articulating myself well enough. Does that make sense? I don't want to like get myself into like weird water.
I honestly forgot about the weird Viking thing that
yeah,
like people dressed up as Vikings during like the January 6th riot and stuff, and
cool.
it's like super dumb, just super dumb. I think part of that does play into like the romanticizing of Vikings and what they were and what they did. You also see a lot of those people dressed up in like full leather, like leather armor and all this stuff. And it's like, belts and boots is about all they would have used the leather for. If you want to be an actual Viking, you would have like a steel cap on with like your fabric like Gambison type armor and your big round shield and your sword, maybe an axe. But I mean, there are like the idea of what Vikings wore even is kind of warped, and I feel like that could partially be due to like, I mean, it's definitely due to pop culture, but specifically thinking of like Conan the Barbarian and like He-Man, like those are the type of things that I bet kind of morphed the idea of what Vikings would have worn or looked like. But so speaking of pop culture, there's so much pop culture Viking stuff right now. There's so much.
It's true.
There's a ton of it. I feel like there are some things where they try to give it like an honest go, and there's some where it's kind of like, this is entertainment. It's not historical, which is fine. There's a place for it. But I just kind of wanted to list through some of the things that exist right now that are clearly inspired by, if not practically trying to retell like Viking history. So there's the Vikings show called Vikings, and the new one that just started, Vikings Valhalla, which is on Netflix. Those are both really cool. They talk about Ragnar Lodbrok and kind of goes into his story. It's definitely not historically accurate, but it also has characters like Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironsides. Those are all like famous Viking figures. So it's interesting. There's The Last Kingdom, which is really good.
It is really good.
Which I know is a favorite of yours.
Yeah.
Last Kingdom is very good. And that one it's interesting because with that one, they don't call themselves Vikings. They just call themselves the Danes. It's the Danes versus the Saxons. So I think that's kind of interesting because, they weren't all Vikings, because a lot of the people in that show were just trying to like settle and farm, and they were like full-time farmer, part-time warrior, and
they just wanted a home.
Yeah. So they weren't like sailing around on their long ships. Not all of them were. So
no, very rarely actually.
Yeah, you don't really see many long ships in that show.
Just a couple times. Like Ragnarok goes up. Is that his name? No, Ragnar.
Ragnar.
He goes off a couple times, but it's not his show, so you don't really see it that often.
Mm-hmm. Those are a lot of the shows. Movies, How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay. Excellent.
I think they call themselves Vikings in that movie. In that movie
I think
series,
so.
it's like the Vikings and their dragons. Yeah, which is kind of interesting because, I mean, the Vikings go off and like pillage and plunder, but on their boats. But they didn't really. Now they ride dragons, so it's like whoa. That was just kind of cute. I just put that in there as like a I had to. Also, the Thor franchise with Marvel, like that's loosely. I mean, it's based on Norse mythology because Thor is like one of the
Norse
god
gods.
figures, but there's not like Vikings in it.
Right.
But it's Viking adjacent.
Yes.
So I included it as an honorary mention.
Okay.
Games. So there's Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Oh, okay.
Probably guessed that that's about a Viking guy.
Yep.
For Honor is a game that I have that came out a little while ago, but there were Vikings in that game. Skyrim is inspired by Viking type, like the Nords that live in Skyrim in that game are definitely inspired by like Scandinavian roots and that kind of thing. Vinland Saga I mentioned with the anime, and the new God of War games, specifically the two that have come out most recently, are based in Norse mythology as well. So there's a lot of pop culture Viking stuff. And there's even more stuff that came out like that's older that I've never heard of before when I was researching this that exists. But yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So what do you think about? I know we kind of got into how Vikings are like romanticized in a gross way by a gross group of people. What do you think? Just like normal people that enjoy these shows. Like, do you think, or I guess, just what do you think about how pop culture has depicted Vikings in general? I suppose.
That's a good question. What do I think about that? I mean, I am someone who's always been intrigued by like Vikings and in some way like the way they form their culture around Norse mythology and like what that belief system led them to do. As made obvious in the earlier part of this podcast, I'm not especially well versed in their actual history.
Yeah. I mean, me neither. Besides, like a few Google searches, like
Yeah. But it is something that I am curious to learn more about. Most, and in some respects, it's in reaction to white supremacists kind of adopting this persona, and I just find it to be frustrating. So
Yeah.
I want to know more about the actual culture. So
Yeah.
you're inspiring me to do some more research and to ingest some more
Nice.
content in this arena. So,
Nice.
yes.
And also, it's worth pointing out that while Norse mythology, by and large, has kind of like, I mean, it's not heavily practiced at all, but there are still people that are pagan, that like identify as pagan, and they still hold to these traditions with that, with like mythology, Norse mythology, and I'm sure that they also loathe and despise that
For sure.
fascists have tried to take over their history and like try to like appropriate that. I feel like it's kind of ironic though, because I'm pretty sure Hitler did the same thing where he also heavily romanticized Vikings and
I mean, I guess they would
like
fit his bill.
yeah,
Yeah.
like he really liked like the whole like Flight of the Valkyrie song. Like
Yeah. You know what?
he was really interested in that kind of stuff.
You know what I think it is? I think I have an interest in like Germanic tribes as a whole, which I think was the word that I was looking for earlier, and like my brain could
Oh,
not
okay.
fill in the blank, because the Germanic tribes had many factions, right? And Rome did come up against Germanic tribes,
That is,
which would have been the
yes.
barbarians. So, anyhow, that's what I was talking about earlier. Now, not to circle back, but I'm circling back a little bit.
Yeah. And the people that were fighting against Rome, those Germanic tribes, the people that would become Vikings, I believe, came from those tribes. Like they traveled north into those areas and settled there, and they became like the Scandinavian Norse people that would have Vikings later on.
Right. So I imagine that the people that now currently existing that still practice like paganism, I feel like it's funny because I don't feel like I had a clear, like in my younger Christian brain, paganism was just like a catch-all for anything that wasn't Christian.
Right.
But I think I'm learning now that it's a specific religion and tradition and not just like a catch-all phrase. But I could be wrong. It's not like it's something I've researched. Anyway.
Right. Same. The only things that I know are like now with what I know with like people that I've seen online that would identify as pagan.
Right.
It's very much like I almost think of like a druidic type of like like runes and like bones and stuff and like that kind of like tarot cards, like that's the kind of stuff that I think about now when I think pagan. But that's not the same as like Egyptian mythology or Greek or Roman mythology. It's not the same. It's like its own specific thing now.
Right, which I assumed was like a dead religion. Like Greek mythology. But it's not.
It's only mostly dead.
Right. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I think that the people that are still practicing that paganism would be just as annoyed about the fascists taking over some of their culture as like traditional Germans probably feel about like Hitler's Nazi Germany. Like it's the same kind of tainting, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny because they're like related. Anyway.
Or like racist groups that try to use Christianity to prove their points. Like I'm sure the same kind of anger that we feel at that it's probably similar.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So.
For sure.
Yeah. But anyway,
huge tangent. Sorry. What do I think about Vikings and media?
Pagans still exist. So yeah, what do you think about how pop culture has depicted Vikings?
I mean,
what's your opinion on IKEA's meatballs?
I mean, they're good. But I, like you said, I really enjoy The Last Kingdom a lot. And I was watching Vikings, that show from the History Channel, like when it was originally, closer to when it was originally airing, and then I fell off at some point. But it's a show that I've wanted to revisit because I do think it's well done.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's funny. I learn a lot about like the mechanics of warfare from these kinds of shows that would be applicable in my writing, because it's kind of embodying a time period that I want to emulate in fantasy, which is not uncommon. Lots of people use that time period as a reference point for fantasy, but I am not someone who's like war-minded at all. So when I come to scenes that are like particularly fighting heavy, it doesn't come easy to me. So these shows have, because like in The Last Kingdom, there's a whole sequence where Uhtred is teaching these Saxons how to fight like Danes. So he's telling them like, this is how you make a shield wall. This is how you defend a shield wall. This is what, and it was like, oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know any of that information. Just like when we were watching the making of the Lord of the Rings movies, the extra features, and they're talking about the different shapes of the shields and like the guards on the swords. It's the same kind of content for me where I'm like, oh, I'm learning something that I can use later. That's fascinating. And it's just fun to watch. They're just good stories.
Yeah, even if like Vikings isn't an accurate depiction of that group of people, it's still a good story. And it's still good historical fantasy.
Yes.
Is definitely how I would label the Vikings show. In the same way that like Rome is depicted in a lot of stories. Granted, there's more records of Rome because it was like a predominant like group of people.
Well, they were also the conquerors for a long time. And as we know, the
Right.
conquerors get to keep the records.
Yeah, they get to, exactly. All their history is pretty well intact. So, yeah, and I'm with you in that it's good stories, even if it's not a 100% like faithful historical recounting of events.
Well, even
it's
like,
still cool.
Yeah, even you said earlier that you had a hard time doing research. Not that I know that there are historians out there that have done gobs of research on Vikings and the Germanic tribes in that area, but from like a quick search, you had a hard time finding stuff.
I just think the information is not as readily available.
Yeah,
it's out there, but like, I mean, you can find all kinds of stuff about, swords that they found that were Viking swords. You can find out about like what kind of clothes they wore, like what their diet was like. Like there's all that kind of information. But it just since it's further, it's like 700 years before the pirate stuff, so the record keeping was just not as good. So yeah, but I really like The Last Kingdom also, and I really liked Vikings. In terms of games and stuff, Skyrim is really cool because you get to like live in a world with that group of people, kind of, even though it's a fantasy race. It's inspired by Vikings and stuff. So, like you can tell. So that's always like they have that same accent. They have like a Scandinavian accent.
sure.
It's cool. It's cool to experience that. I think that I'm gonna really like Vinland Saga once I get more into it. I just haven't finished the first season even. So.
Gotcha.
But that's going to be really good.
Can we briefly touch on Norse influence on Tolkien?
Yeah, Beowulf was a huge influence on Tolkien, and most of his dwarves are named after like Norse mythology dwarves. Even and Gandalf is also that was one of the dwarves, I believe.
Yeah.
Thorin was, Gloin was, yeah.
And the Rohirrim has like strong Celtic vibes, which is
or
Celtic
Saxon or something. There's something.
Well, yeah,
there you go, conflating the Saxons and the Vikings again.
It's all Tolkien's fault.
Yeah.
No, they have Celtic, which would be Saxon, I suppose. Anyway, this is why I get confused. I just like all of that.
Yeah, and Tolkien was a professor, right? He like studied. He wrote a translation of Beowulf.
He did.
Like he knew his stuff with the Norse mythology. So, and that was a big influence on him and his works. What is it?
I was looking to see if I have that. I was trying to see if I had the. I'm sorry. I was looking at my Tolkien shelf trying to see if I had that Beowulf translation, and I do. So why the heck haven't I read it? That's what that was. It was like, because if I didn't have it, I was going to say, by the way, I don't have that. Wink, wink. Christmas.
I've already got your Christmas present.
Have you really? Oh, I'm not done with you. Anyway.
Yes, heavy influences from Norse mythology on Tolkien, which is evident in his just the names alone in his characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Have I come off as a total idiot in this episode? I kind of feel like I have. It's fine.
I feel like I kind of feel like I have too, but it's okay. That's why I put the disclaimer of like, I'm not a historian. All the information I had was just Google searches, but I just wanted to like foster some kind of conversation about Vikings and pop culture Vikings and all this stuff. And you didn't know that Viking was a verb.
I hadn't thought about it. You're right.
You go a Viking.
I mean, the minute you said it was a verb, I was like, that makes sense. ING.
Yeah.
Usually a verb. I feel inspired to go to my library and research Vikings now.
Well, cool. That's kind of the point.
I'm also so excited to be out of Sister Wives so that I can go watch some Viking shows. What a turn.
Mm-hmm. That's quite the about face.
Yes. Maybe we'll revisit this topic at some point.
And since you mentioned battle scenes in fantasy, I want to do an episode. Maybe this will be the next one that I lead.
Okay.
Talking about like big battle scenes in movies and like well done ones versus not so well done ones, and ones that actually like make sense tactically and which ones make zero sense tactically.
If we do that, will you send me a list so that I can pregame and watch them?
Sure.
So that
one of them is going to be the Battle of Winterfell in season 8 of Game of Thrones, because that one is straight hot steaming garbage.
I do remember that one.
And there will be some where you'll get to rewatch some Lord of the Rings movies. So
absolutely. But yeah, if you could send me a list, then I can work on that.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Sounds good.
Okay. In the meantime, I think I'm going to go watch Vinland Saga.
Oh, it's good. You're going to know what I mean by like that. I said that there's a trope that I'm noticing in Viking shows. I'll just tell you now. I mean, well, no, I don't want to spoil it. You watch it, and then once you're a couple episodes in, let me know. You'll know, I think, when you see it. It's like something that has happened in a couple now Viking franchises, and it's just like, man.
Okay.
You'll know when you see it.
Okay.
So.
Fair enough.
Anyway, that's Vikings.
Vikings.
So. It's fun. It's a fun research topic.
It is.
It's fun.
It is. I'm sorry I didn't come more prepared.
It's okay. I could have been more prepared, but to be fair, it's the holiday season and I work retail. So
and my entire office moved last week.
Yeah.
So it's been a ride for both of us.
Also, Pirates was definitely like more I feel like I have more of a natural interest in Pirates than Vikings anyway. But anyway, Vikings are cool too.
They are.
So, yeah, that's it. So I guess next week it'll be another read along. So if you're going along with us on that, read chapter 2 and 3.
Yeah. Well, also read the prologue in chapter 1.
Well, yeah, I mean, well,
don't skip those.
No, skip those. Just read chapters 2 and 3, please. Read through chapter 3.
What if they're really good at following specific directions?
That is a high intelligence, low wisdom build if I ever saw one in D&D.
Don't insult our listeners. Anyway, we still appreciate you. And, yeah. This is not my bit. This is where you close it out.
Yeah. So, until next time, go read something cool about Vikings.
And we'll talk at you next time.
Later.
Bye.